The dynamic between my husband John and his parents was always strained, like a delicate structure where each piece needed the others to stay intact. If one piece faltered, the whole thing seemed on the brink of collapse. This uneasy balance became even more apparent after John's father passed away 3 years into our marriage. His father, who had struggled with high blood pressure, likely succumbed to a heart attack. John's father had been a strict and demanding figure, instilling in him a relentless drive to excel from a young age. In contrast, I was raised in a more relaxed environment, free from such intense pressure. It's harsh to admit, but in a way, John's father's death seemed to lift a heavy burden from him. As John gazed at his father's portrait, it was as if he were finally released from a lifelong straitjacket. However, this newfound freedom did not lead to positive outcomes. Instead, John plunged into a dangerous spiral of gambling, sinking deeper into a destructive habit. John works as a salesman at a major corporation, and we both contribute to our household expenses while living with his parents. After covering our savings and living costs, we had some leeway with our remaining salaries. However, John began to pour his share into gambling. When that wasn't enough, he started dipping into our living expenses, using funds meant for meals with colleagues and entertainment. Initially, I felt sympathy for him. I read that gambling addiction can be managed with proper support, so I tried every possible method to help him recover. It was heartbreaking to consider abandoning someone I once loved. But when I proposed taking over the household finances to prevent further loss, he reacted with anger. He accused me of trying to take his money and flatly refused to let me manage our finances. Despite my explanations about gambling addiction, he dismissed my concerns, insisting that he simply needed to spend a bit of money to relieve stress and accusing me of treating him like he was ill. Despite my warnings, John dismissed my concerns with a harsh retort. "You're not my mother to nag me. Living expenses are necessary, but I need gambling." He began using the money without shame. 3 months after his father's death, he was channeling his entire salary into gambling. My mother-in-law remained completely unaware of John's troubles. He never showed his flaws around her. Instead, he maintained an image of being the pampered and comforted son, a stark contrast to his father's strictness. John likely feared her disapproval, which only fueled his efforts to hide his behavior. I suspect that John's excuses for his gambling stem from a deep-seated guilt. As a result, I became the target of blame. My mother-in-law, who never had much affection for me, sided with John. She scolded me, saying, "Emily, I've heard from John that you shouldn't always criticize him. A wife is supposed to support her husband. As his mother, I know everything about him. He's sensitive and not the type to say harsh things, but you push him to do so. Your nagging is unbearable. You're really the worst wife." My mother-in-law's harsh remarks were relentless, even as I tried to address John's gambling problem. She dismissed my concerns, saying, "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. A little gambling is just men's socializing, right? Instead of meddling, maybe you should improve your housekeeping skills. I've seen your room. It's a mess with dust everywhere. What's this? You went into my room without permission. That's why some of my clothes are missing. Oh, is that a problem? This house is mine now. With Dad gone, I can do whatever I want. I'm actually doing you a favor by getting rid of unnecessary stuff." And with that she left, laughing loudly as she went. After his father's death, my mother-in-law's true nature emerged. Her hostility was no longer limited to sharp comments. She began rummaging through my room and discarding my belongings. When I brought this up with John, he accused me, saying, "Are you accusing my mom of theft? You probably lost it yourself. Are you just trying to use this as an excuse to get more from me?" Instead of offering support, he yelled at me, dismissing my concerns. The realization that I was enduring such treatment from him just because we were married became increasingly unbearable. The situation reached a breaking point when I discovered John had been dipping into our future savings. It was clear to me that divorce was the only viable option, but given how John treated me like an unpaid housekeeper, I wondered if he would ever agree to a divorce willingly. Just as I was grappling with this uncertainty, unexpected help arrived. "Hey, Emily, I need to ask you a favor," my mother-in-law said, her tone oddly coaxing. "Would you consider divorcing John? I know it's sudden, but I'll offer you alimony, $50,000. How does that sound?" I was stunned, thinking I might be dreaming, but a pinch on my leg proved it was real. "I understand you still have feelings for John," she continued. "You always made me out to be the villain to get his attention, but you're not a good match either. John is exhausted from your nagging and lies. And the money you both saved, did you use it for yourself, despite claiming it was for future children?" I was speechless, overwhelmed by her revelations. It seemed John had shifted the blame for his financial misdeeds onto me. My mother-in-law's offer of $50,000 felt like hush money, designed to silence me and smooth over John's reputation. I almost shouted that John's accusations were nothing but lies, but then a different idea struck me. It was distasteful, but if I played along, I could secure a divorce along with alimony. Since it was my mother-in-law's proposal, John wouldn't likely refuse it. Understood. I accept your offer, I said, forcing a smile. Thank you for your generosity. With my mother-in-law orchestrating the process, the divorce was quickly finalized. I made sure to secure my portion of the remaining savings. I received a written agreement for the alimony from my mother-in-law, which was transferred without delay. I was relieved, knowing the money likely came from my father-in-law's inheritance. I rented an apartment near my office, complete with a spacious walk-in wardrobe and a loft. The impact of money was astounding. Living in such a desirable place quickly made me forget the mistreatment I had endured from John and his mother. 5 months after the divorce, my mother-in-law reached out to me. I hadn't changed my phone number, and as I glanced at my phone, her voice came through, pleading, "Emily, please help me." I was taken aback by her desperation as she continued, "I regret how things ended. Please can you help me?" My mother-in-law began to explain her predicament. It became clear that her push for the divorce was influenced by John's statement, "I want to live just with you, Mom." John had likely painted a skewed picture of me, focusing on my supposed nagging while concealing his gambling addiction. My mother-in-law, thrilled by her son's desire for closer proximity, failed to see his ulterior motive. After I left, John convinced her to transfer the house into his name, assuring her, "You can trust me with the finances. It was going to be my inheritance anyway." She agreed without question, but this proved to be a grave mistake. Once the house was in his name, John immediately took out a mortgage on it. My mother-in-law only discovered the extent of the issue 2 days ago when she received a foreclosure notice. When she confronted John, she learned that he had repeatedly missed mortgage payments, and it had been over 3 months since the last one. All the money, his inheritance, the savings, and his salary, had been squandered on gambling. Her shock intensified when John coldly remarked, "Dad's inheritance should still have your share, right? That should buy us some time before the foreclosure." My mother-in-law responded that there was no money left. It had been spent on my alimony and luxury items. Furious, John yelled at her, "Why did you pay alimony behind my back? Get it back, $50,000. Are you out of your mind?" Eventually, my mother-in-law contacted me, demanding that I return the $50,000. I replied, "Even if you ask me now, I can't return it. I have a written agreement, and there's no obligation for me to give it back." As I spoke, memories of her mistreatment began to resurface, fueling my anger. My mother-in-law's tone shifted to one of indignation. "How can you be so heartless when family is in desperate need? You should naturally help out of pity. You're really the worst, completely heartless." I repeatedly tried to address John's gambling problem, but you brushed it off and dismissed my concerns as overblown. Now you're the one talking about family. It's not like I was unaware of the situation. If you had been more forthright, I might have listened. This is your fault. You need to deal with it. Your selfish attitude. Clearly, like mother, like son, aren't you the one who prided yourself on knowing everything? I didn't touch the savings. It was all your son's deceit. You failed to see through him, and now you want me to fix things. I'm fed up. Thanks to you, we're strangers now. As I pressed further, my mother-in-law fell silent. "I'll claim that you stole the $50,000 and sue you," she threatened. I sighed at her short-sightedness. "Given what you've just said, it will be clear that it's a false claim. I recorded this call for evidence." "What did you say?" "It's a call from the mother-in-law who kicked me out." Why would anyone expect anything good? There's no way she could accuse me of theft, especially with a written agreement. With that, my mother-in-law had nothing more to say. "Are we finished here? Resolve this with your son. If I receive another ridiculous call like this, I'll consult a lawyer and pursue it as far as necessary. Be prepared." I emphasized my point before hanging up. After that, there were no more calls from my mother-in-law, though John did reach out, asking to reconcile. Due to repeated missed payments and eventual default, the family home was auctioned off, and both John and his mother were evicted. It also came to light that John had borrowed money from several colleagues, which became known at his company. His abrupt address change and the rumors of his debt created a tense atmosphere at work, leading to his removal from his sales position and a significant drop in his salary. "Mom, Come back to me. I can't make it on my own, John pleaded, living in a cramped apartment with his mother, struggling to manage their finances and being constantly hounded by phone calls and emails for repayment. He appeared overwhelmed and stressed. I tried to help you, but instead of accepting it, you yelled at me with harsh words. Why would anyone want to return to that? You're getting exactly what you deserve. I regretted not changing my phone number sooner, but being able to express my feelings to John in the end felt oddly satisfying. The family dynamic shifted dramatically after my father-in-law's passing. John's life, once controlled by his father, ended up being both freed and ruined by his own actions. Whether the shattered pieces of their lives will ever be repaired is no longer my concern.